John and Sarah Thompson had been the pillars of a strong, loving relationship for 2 decades. Their life in a quiet suburban neighborhood was marked by a deep, unwavering commitment to each other and to their 2 children, Emma, 18, and Max, 15. John worked as a car mechanic at a local garage, a job he had held for over 15 years, known in the community for his reliability and skill. Sarah, on the other hand, spent her days shaping young minds as an elementary school teacher. The couple had met in their early 20s at a community college event. It was not just attraction that brought them together, but a shared set of values and dreams. They married young, driven by a mutual desire to build a stable and nurturing home for the family they planned to have. Their marriage was characterized by open communication, mutual support, and a clear division of household responsibilities, which they adjusted as needed to fit their growing family's needs. Financially, they were not wealthy, but they managed their income prudently, ensuring they always had enough to cover their expenses and save for their children's education. Their home was modest but filled with warmth and laughter. Sarah's meticulous nature complemented John's more laid-back approach, creating a balanced environment for their children. On weekends, the family often engaged in activities together, such as biking through the nearby park or visiting the local library for story sessions. Evenings were typically reserved for family dinners, during which everyone shared details of their day. John and Sarah made it a point to attend all events important to their children, be it a school play, a soccer match, or a parent-teacher conference. Despite the routine nature of their lives, the couple never let their romantic spark fade. They maintained their relationship with regular date nights, sometimes just a quiet dinner at their favorite local restaurant or a movie night at home after the kids had gone to bed. One such evening, as they cleared the dinner table together, John smiled at Sarah, a look of appreciation in his eyes. "You know, I'm really glad we've kept up with these little traditions of ours," he said, handing her the last of the dinner plates. Sarah returned the smile, drying her hands on a towel. "Me too. It's these little things that keep us connected, isn't it?" she replied, her tone affectionate. "Absolutely," John agreed, pulling her into a brief hug. "Doesn't matter how busy we get, we've always got to make time for us." This harmony, however, was soon to be tested in ways neither could have anticipated. It was a typical morning when John received a phone call that would set the stage for the challenges to come. The call was from a lawyer informing him that his estranged father had passed away and left him a significant inheritance. The news was unexpected, not just because John had little contact with his father over the years, but also because of the sheer amount of the inheritance mentioned. The revelation of this inheritance introduced an element of uncertainty into John and Sarah's stable life. While initially it seemed like a financial blessing, the couple could not predict the strain it would soon place on their relationship. As John processed the news, his thoughts were conflicted. He felt a surge of possibilities opened by the financial windfall, but also apprehension about the sudden change in their lives. Sarah noticed the change in John's demeanor as he hung up the phone. "What was that about?" she inquired, concern lining her face. "It was a lawyer," John began, his voice uncertain. "My father, he passed away, left me something substantial." "Oh, John, I'm so sorry," Sarah said, reaching out to touch his arm. Her response was instinctive, a blend of sympathy for the loss and worry for the implications it brought. As they stood in their kitchen, the weight of the inheritance and its potential impact on their future loomed large. The stability and love that had been the foundation of their marriage were about to be tested by the shadows of a past John thought he had left behind. John stood at the kitchen counter, phone in hand, his expression frozen as the lawyer's words echoed in his ears. The call had been brief, the news delivered in a formal, almost indifferent tone. John's father, a man he had scarcely spoken to in over a decade, had passed away, leaving him an inheritance far beyond any figure he had ever contemplated. As he replaced the receiver, a deep silence filled the room, thickening the air between John and Sarah. She watched him closely, noting the complex swirl of emotions crossing his face. John's relationship with his father had been strained and distant, marked by years of misunderstandings and disagreements, particularly about the way his father had managed his business and personal life. That his father had left him anything at all was surprising, let alone a sum that would fundamentally change their lives. "John, are you all right?" Sarah's voice was gentle, laced with concern. She moved closer, her presence a calming force as always. "It's just a lot to take in," John replied, his voice low. He leaned back against the counter, the weight of the inheritance pressing down on him. "I haven't even thought about him in years, and now this. It feels strange to reconnect with him like this, through his will." Sarah nodded, understanding the complexity of emotions her husband must be feeling. "It's a big change, unexpected, but we'll figure it out together," she reassured him, her hand finding his and squeezing it lightly. The inheritance was not just a financial windfall, it was a reminder of the unresolved issues John had with his father. The man had been a successful businessman, but his personal relationships, especially with John, had suffered because of his relentless focus on work and accumulating wealth. Now, even in death, it seemed he was reaching out, affecting John's life in profound ways. In the days that followed, John found himself thinking more about his father, trying to reconcile the man he remembered with the one who had left him such a significant legacy. He dug out old photographs from a dusty album tucked away in the attic, each image sparking a flicker of memories, some bitter, some sweet. One evening, as they sat in the living room with the kids gone to bed, John shared these thoughts with Sarah. "Looking at these photos, I see so much of my life that he wasn't part of. And now, he leaves me this money," he mused, his voice tinged with confusion and resentment. Sarah listened, her eyes soft with empathy. "Maybe this was his way of trying to make amends," she suggested. "Maybe in his own way he was trying to reach out, to do something good with the little connection he felt he still had." "It's possible," John conceded, though skepticism lingered. "But it doesn't change the past. It doesn't change how distant we became or how much was left unsaid." As they talked, John realized that the inheritance was more than just a sum of money. It was a catalyst for confronting his feelings about his father. It forced him to reflect on what he wanted to carry forward and what he preferred to leave behind. Despite the complexities, he recognized an opportunity, not just to secure his family's financial future, but to address and perhaps heal some of the wounds left by his strained relationship with his father. "I guess this is as much about closure as it is about the money," John finally said, a resolution forming in his mind. "I need to use this chance not just to provide for us, but to settle things in my heart." Sarah smiled, squeezing his hand again. "And whatever you decide, I'm here. We're all here with you." The conversation that night didn't solve everything, but it allowed John to start processing his mixed feelings about the inheritance and his father. It was a beginning, a first step towards understanding and maybe one day, acceptance. The news of the inheritance began to subtly influence John's everyday life. Initially, the changes were hardly noticeable, even to Sarah, who knew him best. John found himself lost in thought more often, his mind wandering to the possibilities that the newfound wealth brought with it. Sometimes he would stare out of the window during breakfast, his coffee growing cold in front of him, a faraway look in his eyes. At the garage where he worked, John's usual focus seemed to waver. He was slower in completing his tasks, his hands mechanically moving as he replaced parts and performed diagnostics, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His colleagues noticed a drop in his usual banter and quick laughter. "Everything all right, John?" Mike, a fellow mechanic, asked one slow afternoon as they worked on an old Chevrolet. "Yeah, just got a lot on my mind, you know," John responded, forcing a smile and wiping his hands on a rag. His brief reply was enough to stave off further inquiries, but not enough to dispel the growing concern among his friends. Sarah also began to notice more pronounced changes at home. John, usually meticulous about their finances, started showing an unusual disinterest in their budget meetings, which they held every month to ensure they were on track with their savings and expenses. During their last meeting, he seemed distracted, nodding absent-mindedly as Sarah discussed their expenditures. "John, are you sure you're listening? We need to decide if we're going to use some of the savings for Emma's college fund now or wait," Sarah pressed, sensing his detachment. "Oh yeah, sure, we can wait," he replied vaguely, not really engaging with the question. It was unlike him to defer such decisions without a thorough discussion. Moreover, John's usual eagerness to spend time with the family started to diminish. He skipped a couple of family game nights, opting instead to stay late at work or sit alone in the den, poring over various papers he had brought home from the lawyer's office dealing with the inheritance. Even his interaction with his children changed. He was more absent-minded, often having to be reminded of his commitments, like Max's upcoming parent-teacher conference. One evening, as Sarah was clearing up after dinner and John was supposed to be helping, she found him staring at his phone, lost in whatever he was reading. It took a few louder clinks of dishes before he looked up. "Sorry, I was just looking at something," he mumbled, quickly putting his phone away and joining her at the sink. "What's on your mind, John? You've been really out of it lately," Sarah asked, handing him a dish to dry. "It's just this whole inheritance thing. It's a lot to manage, more than I thought. Meetings with lawyers, calls about the estate, it's overwhelming," John admitted, drying the plate with more force than necessary. "I know it's a lot, but remember, I'm here to help too. We can handle it together," Sarah reassured him, though she was worried about how distracted he had become. "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I just never expected any of this. It's like every day there's something new to deal with," John explained, his tone mixed with frustration and a hint of excitement that he couldn't quite hide. As days turned into weeks, the impact of the inheritance on John's behavior grew more evident. His usual careful consideration of family and work was edged out by a growing preoccupation with the future that the inheritance promised. He began to spend hours on the internet, researching investments and luxury items they had never considered before, like expensive vacations and high-end cars. These changes marked the beginning of a transformation in John, one that subtly steered him away from the man he had been before the inheritance, a man deeply rooted in the values of hard work and family. Now he stood at the precipice of a new identity, molded by wealth and the myriad possibilities it brought with it, not yet aware of the strain it was placing on his relationships and his own sense of self. As the weeks passed since the inheritance announcement, John's behavior continued to shift dramatically. The once attentive and loving husband and father now found himself increasingly irritable and detached from his family. This change was not only evident in his absence at family events, but also in his growing criticism over mundane household matters that he previously overlooked or handled with humor. Sarah first noticed this one evening while preparing dinner. John, who usually praised her cooking, frowned upon tasting the sauce she was simmering on the stove. "This needs more salt. Can't you taste that?" he remarked sharply, his tone more accusatory than constructive. Sarah, taken aback by his sudden critique, tried to keep the atmosphere light. "I thought it was just right, but let's add a bit more for your taste," she responded, reaching for the salt. Despite her efforts to diffuse the tension, John's comments left a bitter taste that wasn't due to the food. This type of interaction became more frequent. John's critiques extended beyond the kitchen to the cleanliness of the house, the way Sarah managed the grocery budget, and even how she spent her free time. One Saturday, as Sarah was sorting through bills and trying to align their budget with the new financial considerations, John walked into the room and scoffed at the stack of papers before her. "Are you ever going to get through that mess? It looks like you're just shuffling papers around. You need to be more efficient," he snapped, his words cutting through the quiet of the room. Stung by his harshness, Sarah looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and hurt. "I'm doing the best I can, John. There's a lot to manage with the house and the kids. I could use a bit more help rather than criticism," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. John paused, seeming to catch himself. "Right, I'm sorry. It's just been stressful with all this inheritance stuff," he muttered before leaving the room, the issue unresolved and the air still thick with tension. The criticisms and John's increasingly high expectations created a charged atmosphere at home. The children, too, began to notice the change in their father. Emma approached her mother one evening while they were clearing the dishes, her voice low. "Mom, why is Dad always so upset these days? He got mad at me for leaving a book on the table." Sarah sighed, putting down the plate she was drying. "Your father has a lot on his mind lately. Just try to keep things tidy, okay? It might help," she advised. though she knew the issue ran deeper than a misplaced book. John's irritability did not abate as the days went on. One afternoon, he exploded over a small stain on the carpet, a stain that had been there for months unnoticed. "Why is this still here? Haven't you noticed it? You should pay more attention to the cleaning," he said sharply to Sarah, who was equally perplexed by his sudden focus on such a trivial issue. "I'll clean it up now," Sarah responded quietly, masking her frustration. As she scrubbed the stain, she couldn't help but feel a growing distance between her and John. It seemed as if the man she had married was slowly being overshadowed by someone who was perpetually dissatisfied and quick to find fault. This pattern of behavior reached a peak one evening when John criticized the way Sarah had arranged the living room furniture, a layout they had both previously agreed upon. "Why did you move the couch here? It makes the whole room look cramped. Can't you see that?" His voice was louder than necessary, and it was clear that his annoyance was about more than just the furniture. Exhausted by the constant critiques, Sarah confronted him. "John, this isn't like you. You're always upset, always pointing out what's wrong, what's really going on. This isn't just about the furniture or the carpet, is it?" John paused, the frustration evident on his face. He was silent for a moment, then admitted, "I don't know, Sarah. I just feel overwhelmed, like nothing's right anymore." This admission marked a turning point for John, as he began to realize the impact his behavior was having on his family. The once harmonious household was now a place of tension and unease, all stemming from his inability to cope with the emotional ramifications of his inheritance. The tension in the Thompson household reached its peak one rainy evening, culminating in a heated argument that epitomized the growing rift between John and Sarah. The day had been fraught with minor irritations for John: a lost tool at the shop, a canceled appointment, and a traffic jam on the way home. Each annoyance piled up, ready to spill over by the time he arrived home. Sarah had spent the day dealing with her own challenges, including a demanding parent-teacher conference and unexpected expenses that needed to be added to their already tight budget. She was in the kitchen, calculating numbers and trying to make ends meet, when John stormed in, visibly agitated. The catalyst for the argument was trivial, yet telling. John noticed that the dinner Sarah was preparing was not what he had expected. "Why are we having pasta again? Didn't we just have this the other day?" he snapped, his tone harsher than he intended. Sarah, already stressed and tired, responded with more edge than usual. "It's what we have in the pantry, and it's quick." "I didn't have time to go to the store today," she retorted, her patience thinning. John's frustration quickly escalated, his voice raising. "It's always something with you, isn't it? Can't you plan better? I need something decent after the day I've had." Sarah turned from the stove, her expression a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Decent? I'm trying to manage 100 things, John. What do you want from me?" Her voice matched his in intensity, reflecting the buildup of weeks of tension. "You could try appreciating what I'm going through with this whole inheritance mess instead of complaining. You think it's easy handling all that money, the lawyers, the expectations?" John shot back, gesturing wildly, his words spilling out in a torrent of pent-up emotion. "And you think it's easy running this house? Handling the kids, the bills, your bad moods?" Sarah's response was sharp, her usual calm demeanor shattered by the constant criticism. The argument spiraled quickly, touching on every sore point in their relationship: communication, responsibilities, appreciation. John criticized, and Sarah defended, each counterpoint driving a deeper wedge between them. "I don't even recognize you anymore, John. This inheritance, it's like it's changed you into someone I can't connect with," Sarah exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. John paused, the anger in his eyes fading into confusion and hurt. I'm just trying to do what's best for us, for our future. But maybe you're right. Maybe I am changing," he admitted, his voice lowering as he began to absorb the impact of his words and her distress. The room fell silent, the only sound the steady drumming of rain against the windows. John looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and saw the strain and sadness in her face. It dawned on him then how disconnected he had become, lost in the whirlwind of financial possibilities and drifting away from the very people he was supposed to protect and cherish. "I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean. I don't want us to fight. I just feel so overwhelmed," John said, his voice softening, the anger dissipating as he approached her. He reached out, tentatively taking her hands in his. "I need help. Maybe we need help. I don't want to lose us to this." Sarah, her eyes moist with unshed tears, nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "I don't want that either. We need to figure this out together, but no more shutting me out, okay?" John squeezed her hands gently, a silent promise. "Okay," he agreed, the weight of their shared challenges settling around them, but with a renewed sense of partnership. This significant argument, while painful, was a necessary catharsis for John and Sarah. It broke down the walls of miscommunication and criticism, paving the way for a more open dialogue about their fears, expectations, and the future. It was a turning point, marking the beginning of a journey towards understanding and healing in their relationship. Weeks after their intense argument, the atmosphere in the Thompson household remained strained and somber. John's internal struggles with the implications of his inheritance had not subsided, and his perspective on his life and marriage had darkened considerably. Despite efforts to communicate more openly with Sarah, his emotions and thoughts had continued to spiral into a place of detachment and cold rationality. One evening, as Sarah was setting the table for dinner, John walked into the dining room with a set expression, his demeanor more serious than usual. Sarah sensed immediately that something was amiss. "John, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern, noticing that he was not his usual self. John paused, looking at Sarah with a mix of resignation and resolve. "Sarah, we need to talk," he began, his voice steady but cold. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about my life and where I see it going." Sarah felt a chill at his tone, a premonition of something dire. She nodded for him to continue, bracing herself for what was to come. "I've realized that this inheritance has opened new possibilities for me, possibilities I want to explore alone," John said bluntly, his words cutting through the quiet of the room. "I think it would be best for both of us if we went our separate ways." Sarah stood frozen, the plate she was holding almost slipping from her hands. "What are you saying, John? Are you talking about divorce?" Her voice was a mix of disbelief and pain. "Yes, divorce," John confirmed, his voice devoid of the warmth it once held for her. "I believe this is the right step forward. For me." The words struck Sarah like a physical blow, her heart sinking as the reality of his words settled in. "So this is it? You get some money and suddenly our life together means nothing?" Her words were sharp, a defense against the overwhelming hurt. "It's not just about the money," John attempted to explain, though his rationalizations felt hollow even to him. "It's about me needing space, a change. I think I owe it to myself to find out what I can do on my own." "And what about us? What about our family?" Sarah's voice cracked, the pain evident. "Does that mean nothing to you now?" John sighed, a part of him wincing at the pain he was causing. "I care about you and the kids, Sarah, I do. That's why I'm prepared to offer you a generous settlement. You won't have to worry about finances." Sarah shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes, her voice rising with emotion. "You think you can just pay us off? That money can replace the years, the life we built together?" "I'm trying to be fair," John said, feeling the finality of the conversation deep in his chest. "It's better this way, for both of us in the long run." The room fell silent, the tension thick between them. Sarah looked at John, really looked at him, and saw a man she no longer recognized. The John she knew, the one who laughed with her, who supported her, seemed to have vanished, replaced by this stranger making calculated decisions based on wealth and individualism. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "If that's your decision, I can't stop you, but don't pretend this is for me or that this is fair. You're choosing money and possibilities over your family. I hope one day you realize what you've lost." With that, Sarah left the room, her dinner preparations forgotten. John stood alone, the gravity of his decision settling around him. As he listened to the silence that followed, a deep, unsettling feeling began to gnaw at him, hinting that maybe he had made a grave mistake. After John's cold declaration of divorce, Sarah was left reeling, yet her initial shock soon gave way to a steely resolve. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to John's inheritance than met the eye, and if their marriage was to end, she was determined to understand all its aspects fully. Determined to uncover the true nature of the inheritance, Sarah started by gathering all the financial documents John had left around the house. Each paper, each receipt, and each legal document were meticulously examined as she sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out in an organized chaos. One afternoon, she called John's lawyer, the one who had been handling the estate affairs. "Hello, Mr. Daniels. This is Sarah Thompson. I have a few questions about the estate my husband inherited," she said, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of tension. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. What do you need to know?" the lawyer replied, his voice courteous yet cautious. "I need a full understanding of everything involved. John mentioned debts that were tied to the inheritance. Can you tell me more about these?" Sarah prodded, her pen poised over a notepad ready to take notes. There was a slight pause on the line before Mr. Daniels responded. "Yes, there are significant debts tied to the estate. Your husband's father had been involved in several failed business ventures before his passing. Unfortunately, these have resulted in substantial financial liabilities that are now part of the estate." The confirmation of debt hit Sarah harder than she expected, but she pressed on. "Can you provide me with the specific figures and the nature of these businesses?" she asked, her tone professional, masking the emotional weight of her inquiry. Mr. Daniels provided the details, and Sarah wrote down everything. The numbers were staggering, nearly as large as the inheritance itself. The implications of this were severe. It meant that the inheritance was not the windfall John believed it to be. Instead, it was a complex financial trap lined with liability and risk. With this new information, Sarah's perspective shifted. She saw how the allure of sudden wealth could blind someone to reality, and she felt a twinge of sympathy for John. However, sympathy didn't deter her from seeking the full truth. Over the next few days, Sarah consulted with a financial advisor, explaining her situation without delving into the personal implications. "Given these debts, what would be the best course of action for someone in my husband's position?" she inquired during one of their meetings. The advisor laid it out clearly. "It's crucial to handle such debts wisely. They can overshadow the asset's value, turning what seems like an inheritance into a burden. If not managed correctly, it could lead to more severe financial issues down the line." Armed with this information, Sarah felt a newfound determination to confront John. It wasn't just about their marriage now. It was about ensuring he didn't fall into a financial abyss out of ignorance and misplaced enthusiasm for his new life. As she organized her findings, Sarah realized that this investigation was not just about financial insight, but also about gaining the knowledge and leverage she needed to handle the forthcoming legal and emotional challenges. This was about safeguarding her future and potentially helping John see the reality of his situation before it was too late. A few weeks after her revelation about the debts tied to John's inheritance, Sarah decided it was time to confront John with what she had discovered. Her investigation had armed her with facts and figures, but the weight of the situation lay heavy on her heart. Despite the tension between them, she cared deeply for John and knew he needed to understand the full implications of his new financial situation. John had been avoiding lengthy conversations with her since announcing his intentions for divorce, but Sarah insisted they talk. "John, we need to discuss the inheritance more thoroughly," she started, as she sat down across from him at the dining room table one evening. John looked wary but nodded. "Okay, what about it?" he asked, his tone guarded. Sarah took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "I've been doing some digging into the estate, John. There's something you need to see." She laid out the documents she had gathered, pointing to the numbers that highlighted the massive debt associated with his inheritance. John's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. "What is all this? This can't be right," he stammered, his initial disbelief turning into confusion. "It's all there, John. The debts your father accumulated are overwhelming. They practically consume the inheritance. You're not just inheriting wealth, You're inheriting a significant financial burden, Sarah explained, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. John looked up from the papers, his face pale. But the lawyer said it was a clean transfer, that everything was taken care of. Sarah shook her head. It seems there were things not fully explained to you. Or maybe you didn't want to hear them at the time. These debts are real, and they're substantial. If you don't handle this correctly, it could ruin you financially. John leaned back, running his hands through his hair, visibly shaken by the news. I had no idea. I thought this was going to be a fresh start for me, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Sarah's heart ached for him, seeing him so vulnerable, but she knew this was a necessary confrontation. I know you did, but ignoring these debts won't make them go away. You have to face this head on, and you have to be smart about it. John was silent for a moment, then met her eyes. What do I do, Sarah? I don't know where to begin with this. That's why I'm here, Sarah said softly. I've spoken to a financial advisor. There are ways to manage this, but you're going to need support, my support. John nodded slowly, the reality of his situation sinking in. I've been such a fool, he murmured. I let this money idea get to my head, and I pushed you away when I needed you the most. Sarah reached across the table, offering her hand. It's not too late to sort this out, John, but we need to work together on this. We're still a team, aren't we? John took her hand, his grip firm yet filled with a new understanding. Yes, we are. Thank you, Sarah, for doing this, for saving me from making a huge mistake. This confrontation marked a turning point for John, as he realized the depth of his misjudgments and the value of Sarah's presence and wisdom in his life. It was a painful yet clarifying exchange that reshaped their relationship and their future, steering them away from the brink of a potentially disastrous decision. After their pivotal confrontation, John and Sarah were left to face the financial quagmire and their strained personal ties. The realization of the actual state of the inheritance had a sobering effect on John, and he began to see the many ways he had allowed himself to drift away from the core values and relationships that truly mattered. The next few days were spent in quiet contemplation and long discussions as John and Sarah mapped out their strategy for dealing with the debts in their marriage. John, now more receptive and engaged, sought Sarah's input on every decision. One evening, they sat down in their home office, papers spread out before them, a calculator at hand. We need a solid plan to manage these debts, John stated, more to himself than to Sarah, his tone serious but calm. Sarah nodded, looking over the documents. First, we should prioritize the debts by interest rate and amount. We pay off the high-interest ones first to prevent them from growing larger, she suggested, her practical mind kicking into gear. John agreed, impressed by her financial acumen. That makes sense. And maybe we should meet with a debt counselor to explore if consolidating some of these debts is possible, he added. As they discussed their options, a new dynamic began to form between them, one of teamwork and mutual respect. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had permeated their relationship just weeks before. In the midst of their planning, John paused, looking at Sarah with renewed appreciation. I can't believe how patient you've been with me after everything I've put you through, he said earnestly. Sarah met his gaze, her expression softening. We promised for better, for worse, didn't we? I meant it, John. I know you did too. This exchange marked a significant shift in their relationship. They began to spend more evenings together, not just working on their financial issues, but reconnecting on a personal level. They reinstated their weekly date nights, sometimes going out to a modest dinner, other times just walking through the neighborhood, talking about everything except money and debts. John started opening up about his fears and insecurities that the inheritance had brought to the surface. I thought this money would make me happy, give me freedom, but it just made me realize how much I value the life we have here together, he confessed during one of their walks. Sarah squeezed his hand, feeling the bond between them strengthening. I'm glad you see that, and whatever happens, we'll face it together like we always have. Their discussions also led to practical changes in how they managed their finances. They set stricter budgets, cut unnecessary expenses, and even started a small side business to bring in extra income. Every dollar saved was directed towards reducing the debt, a shared goal that kept them focused and united. As they worked through their plan, the couple not only rebuilt their financial security but also rediscovered the reasons they had fallen in love in the first place. Their mutual effort to overcome the crisis rekindled their affection and respect for each other, serving as a reminder that together they could tackle any challenge life threw their way. This period of reconciliation and planning was not just about mending their finances, but was a profound journey back to each other, healing the wounds inflicted by misunderstanding and miscommunication. John and Sarah emerged from this phase stronger, their partnership revitalized, and their commitment to their marriage reaffirmed. Months after they began tackling the daunting financial challenges, John and Sarah decided to renew their vows in a small, intimate ceremony at their favorite local park. This decision came naturally, as both felt they had reached a new chapter in their lives, one built on even stronger foundations than before. The crisis had brought them closer, taught them the value of their bond, and reminded them of their resilience as a couple. The day of the vow renewal was sunny and bright, reflecting the hopeful spirit that had grown between them. Family and close friends gathered, witnessing the renewal of their commitment to each other. Standing hand in hand under the canopy of blossoming trees, John looked into Sarah's eyes, his voice steady and full of emotion. "Sarah, the past year has tested us in ways I never imagined. I was lost, but you stood by me, guiding us back to where we needed to be. Today, I recommit myself to you, not just as your husband, but as your partner, your supporter, and your friend." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears as she took her turn. "John, through the storms and calm, you have been my constant. This challenge showed me the depth of your commitment and love. I vow once more to be by your side, to support and love you in all the days to come." Their friends and family applauded as they kissed, sealing their promises. The simplicity of the ceremony mirrored their renewed outlook on life, a focus on what truly mattered: family, love, and togetherness. After the ceremony, as the guests mingled and celebrated, John and Sarah stood together, quietly observing the joy around them. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" John remarked, squeezing Sarah's hand. "We really have," Sarah agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It feels like we've rediscovered something precious that we almost lost." As the evening progressed, they shared their future plans with their friends. They spoke about their continued efforts to resolve the financial issues, which were now well on their way to being managed effectively. They talked about their small side business, which had started to flourish, bringing them not just additional income, but also a shared project that they both enjoyed. Moreover, they discussed their hopes for the future, plans for traveling together once the debts were fully cleared, dreams of seeing Emma graduate from college, and simple aspirations like enjoying their upcoming anniversaries. Each plan was steeped in a commitment to face challenges united, as a team stronger and more connected than ever. Their friends and family listened, inspired by the couple's journey and the palpable strength of their renewed bond. It was evident to all that John and Sarah's relationship had not only survived the trial, but had emerged richer and deeper. The evening ended with John and Sarah walking home together, the stars bright above them. They talked about the day, about the warmth of their friends' wishes, and the joy of feeling reaffirmed in their partnership. "I think we're more than back on track," John said thoughtfully. "We're on a new, better path." "Yes, a path we've carved together, with understanding and patience," Sarah added, her voice content. Their conversation drifted to plans for the next few weeks, each speaking with excitement about the future, no longer as two individuals struggling with unexpected burdens, but as a couple united in purpose and in heart. This chapter in their lives had begun with uncertainty and turmoil, but ended with a celebration of renewed love and partnership. John and Sarah's story was a testament to the power of commitment and the enduring strength of love through adversity.
A wealthy CEO spots his ex-wife at a Manhattan train station with a secret child who looks like him. "She's mine." Marcus's voice cracked as he stared at the little girl with his steel gray eyes. "You were pregnant when I left." Anya's hands wrapped around her coffee mug like a lifeline. "I found out a week after you'd already gone. I tried to call you, but your number was disconnected." "I didn't know," he whispered, his $12 billion empire suddenly meaning nothing. "Anya, I swear to you, I didn't know." "Would it have mattered?" Her voice carried 7 years of pain. "You made it very clear that your career came first." Welcome to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here with me today. We're currently at 26 subscribers, and watching this channel grow means the world to me. Each one of you who takes time to listen to these stories fills my heart with such gratitude. Before we dive into today's story, I want to say a quick prayer for all my beloved subscribers. Heavenly Father, I lift up every person listening to this story today. Bless them with wisdom in their decisions, strength in their challenges, and peace in their hearts. May they find joy in the small moments and courage to pursue what truly matters. Protect their families, guide their steps, and let love be the foundation of everything they build. Amen. Now, let me tell you a story that will challenge everything you think you know about success, love, and second chances. This is the story of Marcus Delacroix, a man who built an empire but lost his soul, until one chance encounter changed everything forever. If stories of redemption and lost love inspire you, hit that like button now and let me know in the comments what you would do in Marcus's situation. The steel and glass towers of Manhattan stretched endlessly skyward, but for Marcus Delacroix, the view from his corner office on the 67th floor felt more like a prison than a kingdom. At 38, he commanded a financial empire worth $12 billion, yet the emptiness gnawing at his chest seemed to grow larger with each passing year. Marcus pressed his palm against the cold window, watching the ant-like figures scurrying through the streets below. Every morning for the past 7 years, he'd stood in this exact spot, surveying his domain. Every morning, the view looked exactly the same, and every morning, he felt a little more hollow inside. "Sir." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, sharp and efficient. "Your car is waiting downstairs for the airport." Marcus straightened his custom Italian suit and grabbed his briefcase. Another city, another merger, another meaningless conquest in his relentless pursuit of what exactly? He couldn't remember anymore. The thrill of the deal had long since faded, replaced by a mechanical routine that filled his bank account while leaving his soul increasingly barren. The elevator descended in silence, carrying him toward another business trip that would add millions to his net worth while subtracting another piece of his humanity. Each floor that passed felt like a countdown to nowhere. "You look tired, sir," his driver observed as Marcus slid into the back of the black sedan. "I'm fine, Charles," Marcus replied automatically, though they both knew it was a lie. Marcus had been fine for 7 years now, and it was killing him slowly. As Charles navigated through the congested streets toward JFK, Marcus's mind wandered to a time when success had felt different. When closing a deal meant celebrating with someone who mattered. When coming home meant more than entering an empty penthouse and microwaving a frozen dinner. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. Hundreds of names, business associates, clients, competitors, but not a single person he could call just to talk. Not a single person who would care if he never came home. The sedan came to a complete stop in gridlocked traffic. Marcus glanced impatiently at his watch, then at the sea of red brake lights stretching endlessly ahead. "Accident on the highway, sir," Charles reported. Consulting his GPS, "We're looking at least an hour delay." "Damn it," Marcus muttered. He had a board meeting in Chicago at 8 p.m. Missing it would cost the company millions, and cost him the respect he'd spent years building. "I can take the alternate route through downtown, but it might not be much better," Charles offered. Marcus stared out the window at the chaos surrounding them. Cars honked aggressively, drivers shouted through open windows, and the autumn air shimmered with exhaust fumes and frustration. In the distance, he could see people walking purposefully along the sidewalks, moving faster than any of the vehicles trapped in this urban nightmare. "You know what? I'll walk to the nearest subway station," Marcus decided suddenly. "Meet me at the airport." Charles looked startled. "Sir, are you sure?" You're wearing a $3,000 suit. The suit will survive, Marcus said, already reaching for the door handle. Text me if the traffic clears up. The autumn air was crisp as Marcus strode through unfamiliar streets, his polished Italian shoes clicking against the concrete with purpose for the first time in months. He rarely ventured into this part of Manhattan, preferring the sterile efficiency of private cars and executive lounges. But there was something oddly liberating about being on foot, moving under his own power instead of being chauffeured from one obligation to the next. Penn Station loomed ahead, bustling with the usual chaos of commuters and travelers. Marcus consulted his phone for the fastest route to JFK, calculating connection times and arrival schedules with the precision that had made him one of the most feared negotiators on Wall Street. And that's when he saw her. Time stopped. Anya Rosewood stood at platform 7, her honey blonde hair catching the afternoon light filtering through the station's windows like spun gold. She wore a simple navy dress that hugged her curves in ways that made Marcus's mouth go dry, but it was her face that stole his breath completely. Those same emerald eyes that had haunted his dreams for 7 years. Marcus felt his knees nearly buckle as 7 years of suppressed memories came flooding back in an instant. The way she used to laugh at his terrible jokes. The way she'd curl up next to him on Sunday mornings, reading art magazines while he reviewed financial reports. The way she looked at him the last time he'd seen her, with such profound disappointment that it had nearly broken him. But she wasn't alone. A little girl, perhaps 6 years old, stood beside her, clutching a worn teddy bear with one arm missing. The child had Marcus's distinctive dark hair, thick and slightly unruly despite obvious attempts to tame it. She had a strong jawline, already pronounced even at her young age. And when she turned to look up at her mother with a question, Marcus saw his own steel-gray eyes staring back at him. The briefcase slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the concrete floor with a sound that echoed through the station like a gunshot. Anya's head snapped toward the noise, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, their eyes met across the crowded platform. Marcus watched the exact moment recognition dawned in her gaze. Her face went pale, then flushed crimson. She instinctively pulled the little girl closer, as if shielding her from view. "Mama, who is that man?" the child asked in a clear, sweet voice that carried across the distance between them. Anya's lips moved, but no sound emerged. She looked exactly as she had 7 years ago when he'd walked out of their apartment, out of their marriage, out of their life together. Beautiful, vulnerable, and now utterly terrified. Marcus found his legs and began moving toward them, each step feeling like he was walking through quicksand. Commuters flowed around him in rivers of humanity, but all he could see was the woman he'd loved more than life itself and the child who bore his face. Anya. Her name came out as a whisper, then stronger. Anya. She grabbed the little girl's hand and started walking quickly toward the exit, but Marcus's longer stride allowed him to intercept them near the information booth. "Please," he said, his voice cracking with desperation. "Don't run from me." Anya stopped, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Up close, he could see the fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held onto the child. But she was still breathtakingly beautiful, still the woman who had once made him believe in forever. "Hello, Marcus." Her voice was carefully controlled, but he heard the tremor beneath it. The little girl looked between them with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Mama, do you know this man?" Anya's gaze never left Marcus's face. "Yes, sweetheart. We used to know each other. A long time ago. What's your name, beautiful?" Marcus asked, crouching down to the child's level. His heart hammered against his ribs as he took in every detail of her face. The way her left eyebrow arched just like his, the stubborn set of her chin that he recognized from his own childhood photos. "I'm Luna," she said proudly, puffing out her chest. "Luna Rosewood. I'm 6¾ years old." Marcus did the math quickly. 7 years since their divorce. 6¾ which meant. He looked up at Anya, and the guilt and pain in her eyes confirmed what he already knew in his bones. "We need to talk," he said quietly, rising to his feet. "I don't think that's a good idea." Anya's voice was stronger now, protective. "We were just leaving. Please." The word came out more desperately than he intended. 5 minutes. There's a coffee shop upstairs." Anya glanced down at Luna, who was watching the exchange with the unnaturally perceptive gaze that children sometimes possess. Her little face was serious, studying Marcus like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "Mama," Luna said softly, tugging on her mother's dress. "He has sad eyes like Mr. Peterson's dog when it rains." The innocent observation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Even a child could see the emptiness he'd been carrying around for years. After a long moment, Anya nodded. 5 minutes. The coffee shop was a small, dimly lit space overlooking the main concourse, filled with the rich aroma of espresso and the gentle hum of conversation. Marcus ordered 3 hot chocolates. He remembered that Anya had always preferred chocolate to coffee, and they found a corner table away from the other patrons. Luna sat between them, swinging her legs and humming softly as she drew pictures on napkins with a crayon she'd produced from her backpack. She seemed oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults, lost in her own world of dragons and castles. "She's mine." It wasn't a question. Anya's hands wrapped around her mug like a lifeline. "Yes. You were pregnant when I left. I found out a week after you'd already gone." Anya's voice was barely above a whisper. "I tried to call you, but your number was disconnected. Your assistant said you were traveling indefinitely and couldn't be reached." Marcus closed his eyes, remembering those dark months after their divorce when he'd thrown himself into work with savage intensity. He'd taken on projects in Tokyo, London, Dubai, anywhere that would keep him from thinking about what he'd lost. He'd changed his phone number, his apartment, even his favorite restaurants. Anything to avoid the memories of their life together. "I didn't know," he said, opening his eyes to meet hers. "Anya, I swear to you, I didn't know. Would it have mattered?" There was no accusation in her tone, just weary resignation. "You made it very clear that you weren't ready for a family, that your career came first." The words hit him like physical blows. He remembered their last fight, the terrible things they both said. How he'd accused her of trying to trap him when she'd mentioned wanting children someday. How he told her that marriage was already enough of a compromise to his ambitions. "Look at this, Mama." Luna piped up, apparently bored with the adult, serious conversation. She held up a napkin drawing of 3 stick figures standing next to what appeared to be a train. "It's you and me and the nice man at the train station." "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Anya said, her voice catching slightly. Marcus stared at the drawing, seeing himself represented as a stick figure in his daughter's innocent artwork. When was the last time anyone had drawn a picture for him? When was the last time anyone had seen him as anything other than a business opportunity or obstacle? "Can I keep this?" he asked Luna. She beamed at him. "Of course. Do you like dragons?" "I love dragons. Mama says they're not real, but I think they just hide really well." "I think you might be right about that," Marcus said, surprised by how easy it was to talk to her. "What's your favorite kind of dragon?" "The nice ones," Luna said seriously. "The ones that help people instead of scaring them. Mama says that sometimes things that seem scary turn out to be wonderful if you give them a chance." Marcus glanced at Anya, catching the meaningful look in her eyes. Was she talking about him? About this moment? "That's very wise," he told Luna. "Your mama is a smart lady." "She's the smartest," Luna agreed. "And the prettiest. And she makes the best pancakes in the whole world." "Do you like pancakes?" "I do," Marcus said, though he couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten pancakes. His breakfast consisted of protein bars consumed during conference calls or expensive hotel room service eaten alone while reviewing financial reports. "Mama could make you some sometime," Luna suggested innocently. "She always makes too many anyway." "Luna," Anya warned gently, but her daughter was already lost in another drawing. "She talks about you sometimes," Anya said quietly, so Luna couldn't hear. "When she asks about her father. I always told her that you lived far away, but that you loved her very much." "Do I?" Marcus asked. "Love her, I mean. I don't even know her." "Look at her," Anya said simply. Marcus looked, really looked, at the way Luna's tongue poked out slightly when she concentrated on her drawing. At the way she hummed the same melody their old music box used to play. At the way she unconsciously mimicked his own habit of tapping her fingers when she was thinking. "She has your eyes," Anya continued. "Your stubborn streak. Your curiosity about everything. Last week she took apart her alarm clock because she wanted to see how time worked." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "Did she put it back together?" "Not exactly." We're still finding tiny gears all over the apartment." For a moment, the tension between them eased. They were just two parents sharing a story about their child. But the moment didn't last. "Marcus," Anya said, her voice growing serious again, "I need you to understand something. Luna is my whole world. I've built a good life for us. She's happy. She's healthy. She's loved. I won't let you hurt her. I don't want to hurt her. I want to know her. I want to—" He struggled for words. "Anya, I've spent 7 years trying to fill a hole in my chest with money and deals and acquisitions. Nothing worked. And now I know why. It's not that simple, isn't it? I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. But please, let me try to make this right. Before we continue with this incredible story of second chances, I want to know, do you believe in fate? Drop a comment and tell me about a moment that changed your life forever." Luna came bounding back from where she'd been watching the trains through the window, her face bright with excitement. "Mama, there's a train that goes all the way to Chicago. Can we take it someday?" "Maybe, sweetheart," Anya said, smoothing her daughter's hair with infinite tenderness. Marcus watched the interaction, seeing the deep bond between them and feeling like an intruder in their perfect little unit. But he also saw something else, the way Anya's shoulders sagged with the weight of being the only parent, the only provider, the only everything in Luna's life. "Where do you live now?" he asked. Anya hesitated. "Brooklyn. I work at a gallery in Soho." "The same gallery?" He remembered her passion for art, how her eyes would light up when she talked about discovering new artists. "No, a different one. I'm actually the assistant curator now." There was pride in her voice, and Marcus felt a stab of regret that he hadn't been there to celebrate her achievements, to support her dreams while she supported his. "That's wonderful," he said sincerely. "You always had such an incredible eye for talent." For a moment, the walls between them seemed to lower. Anya's expression softened, and he caught a glimpse of the woman who had once loved him enough to say yes when he proposed on a rooftop in Paris. "We should go," she said finally. "We have dinner plans." "With who?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Anya's jaw tightened. "Friends. Are you? Is there someone?" "That's not your business anymore, Marcus." She was right, but the thought of another man in their lives, in Luna's life, made him feel physically ill. "Wait," he said as they stood to leave. "Please. Can I see you again? Both of you?" Anya looked down at Luna, who was gathering her crayons with the meticulous care of a child who had been taught to take care of her belongings. "I don't know," she said finally. "This is a lot to process." Marcus pulled out his business card and wrote his personal cell number on the back. "This is my direct line. It's the same number I've had for 5 years. I'm not going anywhere, Anya. Not this time." She took the card but didn't look at it. "I need time to think." "Of course." "I understand." As they walked toward the exit, Luna suddenly tugged on Marcus's sleeve. He looked down to find her holding out the napkin with her crayon drawing of the 3 stick figures at the train station. "This is for you," she said shyly. "It's you and me and Mama." Marcus's throat constricted as he accepted the drawing. "Thank you, Luna. It's beautiful. Will I see you again?" she asked with the directness that seemed to be her trademark. Marcus glanced at Anya, who was watching the exchange with unreadable eyes. "I hope so," he said honestly. Luna beamed at him, then took her mother's hand. "Come on, Mama. We'll miss our train." Marcus watched them disappear into the crowd, his daughter's drawing clutched in his hands like a lifeline. For the first time in 7 years, he had somewhere he needed to be that had nothing to do with money or power or proving himself to the world. He had a family to win back. That evening, Marcus stood in his penthouse apartment, staring out at the city lights that had once represented everything he'd ever wanted. The drawing was taped to his refrigerator, the only personal item in the sterile, perfectly appointed space that cost more per month than most people earned in a year. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for the pretzels. Luna had a good time. I need a few days to figure out how to explain this to her. Please don't contact us until I'm ready. A." Marcus typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." He sat down at his kitchen counter with a legal pad and began making lists. Everything he needed to learn about being a father. Everything he needed to do to prove to Anya that he'd changed. Everything he was willing to sacrifice to earn a place in their lives. For the first time in years, Marcus Delacroix had a purpose that mattered more than profit margins. 3 days later, his phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Marcus had been awake for hours, as he had been every morning since the encounter at Penn Station. "Hello," he answered without checking the caller ID. "It's me." Anya's voice was soft, uncertain. "Are you? Do you have time to talk?" "Yes," he said immediately. "Always. For you, always. Luna's been asking about you. She wants to know if the nice man from the train station likes dragons as much as she does." Marcus smiled despite himself. "I can learn to like dragons." She also asked if you're lonely. Anya's voice caught slightly. "She has this thing about making sure people aren't lonely. She noticed that you ate by yourself and had sad eyes." Marcus had to clear his throat before he could speak. "She's remarkable, Anya. Just like her mother." "Marcus, I've been thinking about what you said, about making mistakes. I made one too." She paused. "I should have tried harder to find you when I discovered I was pregnant. I was hurt and angry, but that wasn't fair to Luna. Or to you. You don't need to apologize for protecting yourself and your daughter." "Maybe not, but I need to say it anyway." Another pause. "There's a children's museum in Brooklyn that Luna loves. We usually go on Saturday mornings. If you want to join us." "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "Text me the address." "Marcus." Anya's voice was quiet. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't," he promised. "I swear to you, I won't." Saturday morning found Marcus standing outside the Brooklyn Children's Museum, more nervous than he'd ever been before any board meeting or merger negotiation. He'd spent the previous evening researching dragons and children's literature, determined to be able to hold up his end of any conversation with his daughter. His daughter. The words still felt surreal. He spotted them approaching from half a block away. Anya in jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes, Luna practically bouncing with excitement in bright purple overalls and light-up sneakers. "Dragon Man!" Luna called out when she saw him, breaking away from her mother to run toward him. Marcus crouched down and caught her in his arms, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and wondering how he'd survived 6 years without knowing this little person existed. "Did you learn about dragons?" she asked seriously, pulling back to study his face. "I did," Marcus said, matching her tone. "Did you know that in Chinese mythology, dragons are symbols of good luck and strength?" Luna's eyes widened. "Really? What else?" "Well," Marcus said, standing and taking her hand. "In Welsh stories, red dragons represent bravery and protection. And in some cultures, dragons are guardians of treasure, but not gold and jewels. They guard the most precious treasure of all." "What's that?" Luna asked, practically vibrating with curiosity. Marcus glanced at Anya, who was watching with cautious optimism. "Love," he said simply. "They guard love." As they walked into the museum together, Luna chattering about different types of dragons while Anya listened with growing amazement, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since he was Luna's age: pure, uncomplicated joy. The next few hours passed in a blur of exhibits and laughter. Marcus found himself crawling through play structures designed for children half his size, building impossible contraptions with oversized Legos, and being thoroughly schooled in the art of dragon care by his 6-year-old daughter. "You have to talk to them gently," Luna explained earnestly as they stood before a display about mythical creatures. "Dragons are really sensitive. They only breathe fire when they're scared or protecting something important." "Is that so?" Marcus asked, completely captivated by her earnest expression. "Uh-huh. And they're really good listeners. Sometimes when Mama's tired from work, I tell my dragon stories and she feels better." Marcus looked over at Anya, who had gone quiet. "Your mama works very hard, doesn't she?" "Really hard," Luna nodded. "Sometimes she falls asleep reading to me because she's so tired. But she always finishes the story the next night." "You're really good with her," Anya observed during a quiet moment while Luna was absorbed in a puppet show about a friendly dragon who helped a lost princess find her way home. "She makes it easy," Marcus replied, watching their daughter's face light up as the puppets acted out the fairy tale. "She's incredible, Anya. You've done such an amazing job raising her." "It hasn't always been easy," Anya admitted. "There were times." especially when she was little and would ask about her father. I didn't know what to say. What did you tell her? The truth, mostly. That her daddy loved her but lived far away. That sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions that don't make sense to children. Anya's voice grew quiet. I never wanted her to think she wasn't wanted. Marcus felt the familiar stab of regret. She was wanted. If I had known. I know, Anya said softly. I'm starting to believe that. When the puppet show ended, Luna bounded back to them with flushed cheeks and bright eyes. Can we get lunch? She asked. I'm hungry, and I want to tell you about the dragon puppet. She was purple and had sparkly wings, and she could make rainbows. They found a family restaurant nearby, the kind of place Marcus hadn't set foot in for years. Red vinyl booths, laminated menus with pictures, and the cheerful chaos of families enjoying time together. Over grilled cheese sandwiches and chocolate milk, Luna regaled them with elaborate stories about dragons and princesses and magical kingdoms where everyone got happy endings. In my stories, the dragons are always nice, she explained seriously. They help people instead of scaring them. That's a much better kind of dragon, Marcus agreed, cutting his own grilled cheese into triangles the way Luna had shown him. Mama says that sometimes things that seem scary turn out to be wonderful if you give them a chance, Luna continued, oblivious to the meaningful look that passed between her parents. After lunch, they walked through Prospect Park, Luna running ahead to chase squirrels while Marcus and Anya followed at a more sedate pace. The autumn air was crisp and clean, filled with the laughter of children and the rustle of falling leaves. How is this for you? Marcus asked quietly. Having me here, I mean. Anya was quiet for a long moment, watching Luna attempt to communicate with a particularly bold squirrel. Confusing, she said finally. Part of me wants to protect Luna from disappointment if you decide this is too complicated and disappear again. But another part of me, she trailed off. What? Another part of me remembers why I fell in love with you in the first place, she admitted. You're different now, more present. The man I married was always thinking about the next deal, the next opportunity. You're actually here, in this moment. I had to lose everything to learn what mattered, Marcus said. I don't want to waste any more time on things that don't make me happy. And this makes you happy? Playing dragons and eating grilled cheese and walking through the park. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. Anya, I've been dead inside for 7 years. Today is the first time I felt alive since I walked out of our apartment. Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the careful walls she'd built around her heart. Mama, Dragon Man, come see. Luna's voice carried across the park from where she'd discovered a pond with ducks. They spent the next hour feeding ducks and listening to Luna's theories about which ducks were actually dragons in disguise. As the afternoon wound down, Marcus found himself reluctant to let the day end. I should probably get her home, Anya said as Luna began to show signs of the impending crash that comes after a day of high excitement. It's almost nap time. Can I? Marcus hesitated. Can I walk you home? Anya looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Their apartment was in a converted brownstone in Park Slope, cozy and filled with evidence of the life they'd built together. Luna's artwork covered the refrigerator, books were stacked everywhere, and the whole place had the lived-in warmth that Marcus's sterile penthouse completely lacked. This is beautiful, he said, meaning it. It's small, but it's ours, Anya said, a note of defensive pride in her voice. It feels like a home, Marcus replied. That's not something money can buy. Luna was fading fast, cuddled against Anya's side on the couch with her beloved teddy bear. Will you read to me? She asked Marcus with sleepy eyes. Marcus looked to Anya, who nodded. She loves stories. The book Luna chose was about a lonely dragon who learns to make friends. As Marcus read aloud, his daughter's breathing gradually evened out, and by the final page, she was fast asleep. I should put her in her bed, Anya whispered. Marcus watched as she carried their daughter to her room, his heart clenching at the tender way she tucked Luna under a quilt covered in dragons and castles. When Anya returned to the living room, they sat in the gathering twilight, neither wanting to break the peaceful spell of the day. Thank you, Marcus said finally. For today. For letting me be part of this. Thank you for showing up, Anya replied. Not just today, but really showing up. Present and focused and father-like. I have 6 years to make up for. I don't intend to waste any more time. Anya tucked her feet under her on the couch, studying him in the dim light. What does that mean, exactly? In practical terms? It means I want to be in her life, in whatever way you're comfortable with. I want to learn everything about her, her favorite foods, her friends, what makes her laugh, what scares her. I want to be the father she deserves. And us. The question was barely audible. What about us? Marcus met her eyes. I'd like a chance to earn my way back into your life, too. If you'll let me. Marcus, Anya shook her head. It's not that simple. I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago. I'm not sure I know how to be part of a couple anymore. I've been on my own for so long. I'm not the same person either, Marcus said quietly. Maybe that's good. Maybe we can figure out who we are now together. Before Anya could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and declined the call. Work? She asked. Always. He set the phone aside. But not today. It rang again almost immediately. This time, Anya could see the caller ID. Board emergency. You should take it, she said, but her tone had cooled noticeably. No, Marcus declined the call again. Whatever it is, it can wait. Marcus, be realistic. You run a $12 billion company. You can't just ignore. His phone rang a third time. Marcus looked at it, then at Anya, then deliberately powered it off. I can and I am, he said firmly. I spent 7 years choosing work over everything that mattered. I won't make that mistake again. Something in Anya's expression shifted, a cautious hope flickering in her eyes. What if it's a real emergency? Then my very capable executive team will handle it, Marcus said. And if they can't, then I'll deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, I'm exactly where I want to be. This transformation is incredible, but you need to hear what happens next. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that share button and pass it along to someone who needs to hear about second chances. They talked until well past midnight, sharing 7 years' worth of stories, dreams, regrets, and hopes. Marcus told her about the emptiness that had driven him to seek out increasingly dangerous business deals, the way success had felt like ash in his mouth when there was no one to share it with. I would close a $1 billion deal and go home to an empty apartment, he confessed. I'd stand in my kitchen, looking at the city lights, and wonder what the point of it all was. I had everything I thought I wanted, but I felt like I was disappearing a little more each day. Anya told him about the sleepless nights when Luna was a baby, the fear and exhaustion and overwhelming love that had shaped every decision she'd made. There were nights when she wouldn't stop crying, and I was so tired I could barely stand, she admitted. I was 25, alone, working 3 part-time jobs just to pay rent on a studio apartment. I would look at her and think, I have no idea what I'm doing. But then she'd fall asleep in my arms, and I'd know that I would do anything, to protect her. I used to lie awake wondering if I'd made the right choice, she continued. Keeping her when I was so young and alone and broke. But then she'd smile at me, and I'd know that she was the best thing I'd ever done. You made the right choice, Marcus said fiercely. She's perfect, Anya. You're both perfect. We're not perfect, Anya said with a sad smile. We're just real. We have dance parties in the kitchen when we're sad. We eat cereal for dinner sometimes because I'm too tired to cook. Luna still crawls into my bed during thunderstorms. It's messy and chaotic and nothing like the life I thought I'd have. It sounds like paradise, Marcus said quietly. As the night wore on, they found themselves sitting closer together on the couch, the space between them shrinking as the walls around their hearts slowly crumbled. I missed you, Marcus admitted. Every single day for 7 years, I missed you. I would see couples in restaurants, families in parks, and I would think about what we could have had. Then why didn't you come back? Anya asked. In all those years, why didn't you ever try to find me? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Pride, I suppose. Fear. I convinced myself that you were better off without me, that you had moved on, found someone who could give you what I couldn't. What you couldn't, or what you wouldn't. Both, he said honestly. I was so afraid of failing that I never tried to succeed at the things that actually mattered. And now? Now I know that the biggest risk isn't failing. It's never trying at all. When he finally stood to leave, they lingered at the door like teenagers reluctant to end a first date. Can I see you again? He asked. Both of you. Luna's going to expect it now, Anya said with a small smile. She's already planning your dragon education curriculum. And you? What do you want? Anya reached up and touched his face gently, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. I want to believe this is real, that you're really here to stay. I am, Marcus said, covering her hand with his. I promise you, Anya. I'm not going anywhere. As he walked back toward the subway, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. His phone had 17 missed calls and 43 unread messages, but for the first time in his adult life, he didn't care. He had found what he'd been searching for without knowing it. The next morning, Marcus woke up in his penthouse and made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. He called his assistant and cleared his schedule for the week. Then he called his head of operations and told her she was temporarily in charge. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Everything is perfect," Marcus said, and for the first time in years, he meant it. "I have some personal matters to attend to." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular fixture in Luna and Anya's life. He attended ballet recitals and parent-teacher conferences. He learned to braid hair and make pancakes shaped like dragons. He read bedtime stories and helped with homework and discovered that the sound of his daughter's laughter was worth more than all the money in his bank accounts combined. He also courted Anya with the patience and dedication he'd once reserved for corporate takeovers. Flowers delivered to her gallery. Handwritten notes tucked into Luna's backpack. Quiet dinners after Luna was asleep, where they slowly rebuilt the trust that had been shattered 7 years before. "You know," Anya said one evening as they walked through the same park where they'd once planned their future, "Luna asked me something yesterday that made me think." What did she ask? She wanted to know why some families live in different houses. I told her that sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out. And what did she say to that? She said that dragons always protect their treasure together, so why don't dragon parents live together too? Marcus stopped walking. What did you tell her? I told her that maybe some dragon parents just need to remember what their treasure really is. That night, as Marcus tucked Luna into bed, she looked up at him with her serious gray eyes. "Daddy," she said, the first time she'd called him that, "are you going to live with us now?" Marcus glanced at Anya, who was standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "Would you like that, little dragon?" he asked. "More than anything," Luna said sleepily. "Then we can be a real dragon family." 6 months later, Marcus Delacroix sold his penthouse and moved into the brownstone in Brooklyn. He kept his company but restructured it so he could work from home 3 days a week. He learned that success could be measured in dance recitals attended, bedtime stories read, and family dinners shared around a kitchen table covered in Luna's artwork. The man who had once commanded a $12 billion empire from the 67th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper now considered his greatest achievement to be earning the right to be called Daddy by a little girl who believed in dragons. What did you think of Marcus's transformation? Have you ever had to choose between success and family? Share your thoughts below, and if this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. 1 year after that fateful encounter at Penn Station, Marcus stood in the same spot where he'd first seen Anya and Luna. But this time, he wasn't alone. Anya held his hand while Luna skipped ahead, pointing out all the dragon trains she could see. "Do you ever regret it?" Anya asked quietly. "Giving up the empire you built?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "I didn't give up my empire," he said. "I finally figured out what my real empire was." He pulled out his phone and showed her the home screen, a photo of the 3 of them at Luna's 7th birthday party, all covered in cake frosting and laughing until their sides hurt. "I spent 38 years building the wrong kingdom," he continued. "I thought success meant having enough money to buy anything I wanted. But the only thing I ever really wanted couldn't be bought." "Mama, Daddy, look," Luna called out, pointing to a massive digital display showing train destinations. "There's a train going to a place called Happily Ever After." Marcus and Anya laughed, knowing that Luna had probably misread the destination, but also understanding that she wasn't wrong. They had found their way to Happily Ever After. Not the fairy tale kind with castles and carriages, but the real kind, built on forgiveness, second chances, and the revolutionary idea that the greatest treasure isn't what you accumulate, but who you choose to share your life with. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters. Sometimes the greatest success is simply showing up for the people we love. And sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the biggest bank account, but the one with the fullest heart. Marcus Delacroix learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in bedtime stories read, small hands held, and the sound of "I love you, Daddy," whispered in the dark. He had built an empire of love, and it was worth more than all the money in the world. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of redemption and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of choosing love over ambition, and subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles for more stories that will inspire and uplift you. What would you choose, a billion-dollar empire or a chance to be truly loved? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember that it's never too late to come home to what matters most.